At least 42 people imprisoned by Daesh terrorists have been killed in an airstrike in Syria, apparently conducted by the US-led coalition. According to a UK-based Syrian opposition group, 15 Daesh militants were also killed in the attack that targeted a jail in Mayadeen. The town of Mayadeen is located in the Euphrates Valley, some 45 kilometers southeast of the city of Deir El-Zour. In reaction, the coalition has confirmed that its aircraft targeted Syria's town of Mayadeen on June 25 and 26. The coalition is pledged to assess the report of civilian deaths. It is estimated that thousands of people have lost their lives in the coalition's strikes against Daesh in Syria and Iraq since 2014. The UN has described May as one of the deadliest months for civilians in Iraq. Tony Gosling is an investigative journalist who joins us from Bristol. Well, when it comes to civilian deaths, it has really spiked in the past months. Again, the question of accountability comes in here, and what has been done in order for that to happen? It doesn't appear much.
Well, in the case of ordinary civilian deaths, you can almost believe some of the US excuses for this happening. This is collateral damage involved in some of the attacks they've been doing. But if they destroy, as we've heard today, and kill prisoners, ISIS prisoners, then there is really no excuse for that whatsoever. I think someone needs to knock on the door of James Mattis and tell him that if you kill ISIS's prisoners, you're actually helping ISIS, and you're killing, that is, ordinary civilians in Syria. There's no excuse for that. And also potentially soldiers from the Syrian army who've been captured by ISIS and other people who are fighting ISIS. There really is no excuse for the Americans attacking these prisons. The president of Syria, President Assad, and the Syrian government, the Syrian Arab Army, and the Russians, with a bit of help from the Russians, and a lot of help from the Russians, are beginning to take back their country. In fact, they're being very successful in taking back their country, and that, it seems, is the real thing which is annoying the Pentagon. And as they do so, and as they restore order and international law in Syria, so it seems the US and the Pentagon get more angry, and they're lashing out at the people who are ISIS's enemies. Now, that's not what they're saying they're doing publicly. That's what's happened today.
Do you think that one of the ways that they're lashing out their anger is the most recent report that says that the Syrian government is actually preparing for a chemical attack against civilians?
Well, that's right. This morning, James Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, they call him, US Defense Department, he and also our British Defense Secretary, Michael Fallon, have been saying that, Assad will pay a heavy price for any chemical weapons attack. Well, they also need to be reminded of two things. One, that the investigation into the most recent chemical attack back in March, April this year in Syria has not reached any firm conclusions yet. In fact, the evidence is that this attack was either faked or else was carried out by ISIS itself. So that's the first thing. But secondly, this whole business of chemical weapons, if you go back even further, you'll find that Carla Del Ponte, Seymour Hersh, the US investigative journalist, have been pointing the finger actually at the US, and Hillary Clinton particularly is being responsible for the earlier chemical weapons attack. But if you go back even further to the 2003 and the illegal invasion of Iraq, you'll find that there was a complete fabrication by Colin Powell, by Tony Blair, by George Bush of a weapons of mass destruction story there. And I think most people in the Western world now know that this is how these wars are started, by faking and by fabricating evidence. And actually, I think much of the military, including the US Air Force and the Royal Air Force, do realise that that's how they attempt to start these wars. And the real agenda seems to be continued balkanisation of the Middle East, according to the Israeli Yinon plan from the 1980s. And I think we need to make sure that our military, as well as our politicians, are familiar with the real objectives in Syria. And as the Russians begin to help the Syrians to restore order there, so the Americans are doing their utmost to keep the war going.
Thank you. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist from Bristol.